Now we return to the second major decision President Trump announced today. He refused to certify Iran's compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal. Nick Schifrin has that.
Today, President Trump followed through on his vow to renounce one of his predecessor's signature achievements.
Today, I am announcing our strategy to confront the Iranian regime's hostile actions and to ensure that Iran never, and I mean never, acquires a nuclear weapon.
President Trump accused Iran of violating the agreement's nuclear restrictions. He didn't decertify based on that, but because he said the deal gave away too much for too little.
We will not continue down a path whose predictable conclusion is more violence, more terror, and the very real threat of Iran's nuclear breakout.
President Trump cited long-standing criticisms. The deal doesn't restrict Iranian support of groups such as Hezbollah, which the U.S. calls a terrorist organization. The deal doesn't restrict Iranian missile testing. And the deal includes expiry dates, or sunsets, on Iranian enrichment and uranium stockpiles.
As key restrictions disappear, Iran can sprint towards a rapid nuclear weapons breakout.
Part of today's announcement was new sanctions on Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps for sponsoring terrorism. In Iran, President Hassan Rouhani defended the Revolutionary Guard and called the deal non-negotiable.
The Iranian nation is not a nation that will yield to forceful talking and hateful speeches from a dictator. The Iranian nation will not surrender to any nation.
The deal's defenders called President Trump's statement misguided and dangerous. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi.
President Trump's refusal to recertify is a grave mistake that threatens America's security and our credibility at a very critical time.
And the EU's top diplomat, Federica Mogherini, said Iran was in compliance.
We cannot afford, as international community, as Europe for sure, to dismantle a nuclear agreement that is working and delivering, especially now.
What happens now is up to Congress. Senator Bob Corker will lead negotiations to eliminate the deal's expiry dates and automatically reimpose nuclear sanctions if Iran advances its nuclear program.
In the event Iran takes steps to move to a lesser place in a one-year breakout and do certain things with intercontinental ballistic missiles, we're going to reapply our sanctions. We have provided a route to overcome deficiencies and to keep the administration in the deal.
But today, Trump said if Congress fails and allies don't get on board, he won't stay in the deal.
They may come back with something that's very satisfactory to me, and if they don't, within a very short period of time, I'll terminate the deal.
We break down that threat and the legislation before Congress with Rob Malley. He was special assistant to President Obama and the lead senior White House negotiator for the agreement. He's now vice president of the International Crisis Group. And Mark Dubowitz is chief executive of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a Washington, D.C.-based think tank. He's been advising the Trump administration on Iran policy. Welcome to you both. Thank you very much. Rob Malley, let me start with you. A lot of people who are defending the president say, look, this is the best way to get any leverage to actually get a better deal. The president has to decertify, Congress needs to make a move, and the president needs to threaten to walk away. What's wrong with that?
It's not going to work. That's what's wrong with it. We have a deal now that's working, and everyone who's looked at it says it's working. In fact, what's quite striking is that a president who probably would be desperate to say that Iran is not in compliance had to say that that they are in compliance, and that's what he doesn't like. So the deal is working, and if you now go and tell the Iranians, by the way, either you agree to change the deal or we're walking away, or you tell the Europeans, either you agree to renegotiate the deal or we're out, is that leverage, or is that threatening to violate the deal, which is going to convince them that there's no business to be done with this administration? Because it's basically telling them, either you help me violate the deal or I'm going to violate it on my own. I think their preference will be to tell the president, go ahead, violate on your own. We're not going to be accomplices.
So, Mark Dubowitz, leverage or inevitable violation?
No, it's leverage, and the deal is working. I actually agree with Rob. It's working for the Iranians. And it's working for the Iranians because they're getting hundreds of billions of dollars in sanctions relief that the Revolutionary Guards is using to fund its destructive activities abroad, its internal repression at home. And the deal is working for the Iranians because it was never about Iranian compliance. It was all about Iranian violations with respect to the deal and a patient pathway to nuclear weapons and ICBMs. I mean, we are obsessed with Iranian violations. They're obsessed with compliance. They're obsessed with waiting for the restrictions to go away over time and to actually emerge in 10 years' time with an industrial-sized nuclear program, with near-zero nuclear breakout, with ICBMs, with advanced centrifuge they can hide under mountains, $1 trillion economy immunized against our ability to use sanctions, and regional hegemony. That sounds like the deal is working.
So, Rob Malley, is the deal just handing all these things to Iran?
And let's remember where we were back in 2014-15. The threat that Prime Minister Netanyahu, our own leaders, Republican and Democrats, were saying is that the existential threat we faced was of Iran acquiring enough fissile material to build a nuclear bomb. That was what everyone was saying was what we had to address. President Obama addressed it. It's working. We now have at least 10 to 15 years where Iran will be at least a year away from being able to acquire that fissile material, and then other restrictions will last longer than that. And what Mark is not saying is, okay, so you threaten to walk away if Iran doesn't agree to renegotiate the deal, which they won't. I could almost guarantee that. So then we walk away, and then all these restrictions that they're currently living under disappear, and we're going to face not only in Iran with ballistic missiles and all the other activities that Mark objects to, but also with the freedom to go ahead and accumulate enriched uranium at levels that currently they can't do, and without the inspections that are unprecedented. And Mark didn't mention that.
So, Mark Leibowitz, so Senator Corker has saying that he has perhaps a solution to some of these problems, and he's going to lay out legislation that would have automatic snapback sanctions if Iran dips below 1 year breakout to a nuclear weapon. And he says effectively rid the deal of the sunset clauses and penalize Iran for its intercontinental ballistic missile program. Can that work?
Well, I think Rob deserves a lot of credit for actually getting Iran to a 1 year breakout. So that's a good move, and I think we should be grateful.
Because it was only about a month before.
Yeah, no, they got them to 1 year breakout. The problem is, as Barack Obama himself has said, that after year 10 and 11 and 12, breakout time actually falls to weeks and then days. So that, of course, is the problem with the deal. And I think what Bob Corker is saying is that's unacceptable as a matter of national security, that the Iranians are going to get near-zero nuclear breakout, and there'll be a turn of the screw away from having dozens of nuclear weapons. So he wants to lock in, as a matter of statute, as a statement of U.S. law and policy, that Iran should never have less than 1 year breakout. I'm sure Rob agrees Iran should never have less than 1 year breakout, and then we got to find a way, a bipartisan way, to deal with these sunset provisions so that they don't emerge with a massive nuclear program and the ability to develop multiple nuclear weapons, fix them to ICBMs, and threaten the United States.
So, Rob, is that realistic? Can Senator Bob Corker and the Senate unilaterally essentially change some of the aspects of this deal? Isn't that a violation of the deal?
Sure, they could try. They won't, again, they won't succeed. I think there's a way to go about this, and there's a way not to go about it. The way not to go about it is to tell the Iranians today, by the way, we're unilaterally going to rewrite the deal. This deal, which part of the compromise was that after a period of time, some of the restrictions would be lifted, although Iran would never be allowed to build a nuclear bomb. It still would have to be submit to intrusive inspections. Those would last forever. But some of the constraints would be lifted over time. That was part of a deal. And if we go tell the Iranians that part of the deal, which we negotiated for months, we're taking it away by the. You're not going to have any freedom to lift any of these constraints over time. They'll say, what's in it for us? What did we negotiate for? The right way to do that is to say, let's implement this deal now. Why create an artificial crisis when today we have Iran, as Mark acknowledges, at a 1 year breakout timeline? Let's keep it. If in 4, 5, 6 years the deal is being implemented, we could sit down with Iranians, and the Europeans might be prepared, they've said they'd be prepared to do it, to sit with them and say, the deal is the deal, but there's some things we want now, we would like to have more, which is we'd like some of these things to be extended. There may be things the Iranians want. You negotiate it, but if you try to impose it unilaterally, you're encouraging the Iranians to do the same. They could unilaterally decide they want to change parts of the deal, and the deal will collapse, and we will be alone in that. We will be alone.
And Mark Leibowitz, that is one other criticism, that this is going to isolate the U.S. And, you know, critics say, well, if we're going to try and change the deal now, our word is worth less, and so therefore people like North Korea won't negotiate in the future.
So what the president said in his speech as well is that part of the strategy is not just to work legislatively with Senator Bob Corker, but to work with the Europeans. And President Emmanuel Macron has come out for 3 occasions publicly saying, please keep the nuclear deal, Donald Trump. Don't walk away from this deal. And if you don't walk away from this deal, we are prepared to address the sunset provisions, these post-2025 scenarios that Rob and I agree are very problematic. We agree with missile program. We have got to deal with the missile program. We don't want Iran to have ICBMs, and we got to deal with Iran's destructive regional behavior. So the Europeans are already showing a willingness to shift the debate from where they were before, which was keep it, and others were saying nix it, to where we are today, which is fix it or nix it.
The Iranians will not agree. What is in it for them? Why would they sit down and say, we're okay with changing the terms of the deal, the terms that you want to change the deal, and you're threatening to walk away from the deal that currently exists? Why would they even sit down with us?
It happened multiple times in the Cold War with the Soviet Union when they had nuclear-tipped missiles aimed at American cities. We walked away from deals. We renegotiated deals. We renegotiated follow-on agreements. It happened with the Soviet Union, and even though everybody said the Soviets were not prepared to negotiate, and Ronald Reagan showed them that that was not the case.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there.
Playing with fire.
We're going to have to leave it there. Mark Dubowitz, Rob Malley, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Rob.